What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the extended cut, minimally edited podcast version of this week's episode. Ever since the dawn of time, or at least since I started private practice like 12 years ago, I always wondered how other therapists spent their time between sessions because I've always worked in a setting where I was in an office space where other therapists were working too. And almost universally, therapists have their door closed between sessions. And so it's like, what you doing in there? What you doing? What's going on in there? And back in the day, I used to assume that people were like, writing notes and doing their like continuing education or like reading some very dense book about some therapy technique. And now that I've been doing this for a while, I realize that maybe a little bit of that is true, but there's definitely other stuff that we do between sessions. Might I say that we need to do between sessions in order to take care of ourselves, in order to be a good therapist. So I wanted to make an episode about this. And at first I was planning on just sharing how I spend my time between sessions. How egocentric of me. Because obviously, however I spend my time is exactly how every therapist spends their time between sessions. But not only is that more egocentric than I'm wanting to lead into, but also the way I have my schedule set up right now is very different than how I used to when my primary source of income was from seeing therapy clients. And now I mostly just see therapy clients one day a week. So the way I spend my time between those sessions looks pretty different now than when I was seeing therapy clients 4 days a week. So I took to Instagram, I put a poll out to ask you all how you spend your time between sessions. And I don't know why I do this to myself, but I left this as an open-ended question rather than say offering check boxes and saying check all that apply, because I didn't want to limit people's responses. I just wanted people to share what they do between sessions, whether it's a short gap or a longer gap. And I figured the average person would send in like a list of things they might do between sessions rather than just one answer. So did I meticulously go through everyone's list of answers and then compile them into a chart to know which responses were most common? Yes, I did. Did that take much longer than I anticipated? Yes, it did, but I actually found it quite interesting, so I'm going to share those results in today's episode. Some of the things you can anticipate in the extended cut of the episode that are not in the shorter official version are, I'm going to share some more information about responses that only say one or two people said that they spent doing between sessions. There's actually quite a few responses that only one or two people chimed in with, which makes sense because as I think of what my responses are, a lot of them don't show up on this list either. So it still seems worthwhile to share them with you all, but because only one or two people responded out of 53, then I opted not to put them in the primary table of results. And as part of the extended episode, I will also share how I spend my time between sessions with clients, despite all the things I just said about it, being kind of egocentric, just in case you're curious. And I'll share a bit about how that's evolved over time as my career has really shifted over time as well. So without further ado, let's dive into these results. I posted a poll on Instagram and I asked, how do you spend your time between sessions? And, just to make sure I was clear about what I was asking, I said whether between back-to-back clients or if you have a gap in your day. So we're going to get a lot of different kinds of responses coming through. 53 people responded to this poll. Thank you, as always, for responding to these polls on Instagram. I really appreciate it so much. Like, you could just skip over my little story and you took some time to write an answer. And a lot of your answers are thoughtful with like a list of a bunch of stuff. So thank you. One thing I was mindful of putting this poll on Instagram is that the folks who are responding to the poll are not only people who are on Instagram to begin with, but they're also following me and they're also on Instagram often enough that they're going to see my story before it disappears within 24 hours, inviting them to respond to the poll. So there might be kind of a bias in the group, and we are going to see that quite a few people use social media, spoiler alert, during their time between sessions. And I'm just curious how much of that is representative of all therapists versus, therapists who follow me or therapists who are able to see this poll on social media. Now, I didn't specify in this poll if this was directed towards folks in private practice or community mental health or anything specific. I just left it open-ended on purpose. And I am kind of curious whether we might see differences in folks' responses for folks who are working from home, folks who are working in person, but maybe in more of a private practice type setting versus folks who are working for an employer of some form. Do the answers look different across those different settings? I'm not really sure. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the results of this poll. And remember, I just went through the lists of responses people gave of how they spent their time between sessions and counted out how many times each item was mentioned. So out of the 53 people who responded to the question, how do you spend your time between sessions? 25 people said that they will do notes or admin or emails. So again, that doesn't mean that all 25 people spend all of their time between sessions doing notes and admin work, but 25 of the people included that in their list of responses. But that does stand to question, like, what about the other 28 people? Do they not do notes and emails between sessions? Or maybe they just opted not to put it in their response because they were highlighting something else. Maybe folks don't do those between sessions. Maybe it's like you save it for the end of the day, or you have a designated day in the week that you do that separately for admin time. I'm so curious about all of these things. I've done it different ways throughout my career. And at this point, generally between sessions that are back to back, I just write like 3 bullet points to remind me what to write in my actual note later. And I definitely do other admin work between sessions where like I'm getting back to clients, responding to their emails, things like that. And the next most frequent response from 21 people was eating or drinking. Now, some of the people were clearly acknowledging like a proper lunch break, like you have a longer gap between sessions. But a number of people were talking about like cramming in some snacks, some candy in between those back-to-back sessions. And that kind of stood out to me that it was noteworthy enough that we're trying to like cram in snacks between our back-to-backs enough that like this is the second most frequently cited thing people mention. People are also talking about just like going to refill their water bottle between sessions or, you know, grabbing a coffee or tea or something like that. Obviously, we need to eat food. It just stands out to me that like if we were to ask folks in other professions how they spend their time between meetings, or I don't know, like would that be the second most commonly given response, or would that just be assumed that because we are humans and we need to eat and drink in order to function, that that's obviously going to happen? I don't know. But it just stands out that that is the second most given response, when to me it's like, yeah, obviously, I sure hope you're eating and drinking during your workday. But yeah, I relate with that. You have to kind of cram it in sometimes. And along the same vein, 16 of the 53 people mentioned taking a bathroom break. I sure hope that you're taking bathroom breaks throughout the day, but maybe the fact that folks are mentioning this as like how they spend that, you know, sometimes 5 minutes or 2 minutes between sessions for some folks, it's like eat a quick power bar and like run to the bathroom and hope you make it to your next session on time. You really feel it if you're doing that back to back to back. And then 15 people said that either walking or some type of body movement was something that they spent their time between sessions doing. Now, even though for most of the responses folks gave for this poll, they just kind of listed things out, wrote as far as what activities they do. You know, might it say like bathroom break, comma, filled my water bottle, comma, notes, comma. For this one about walking or getting some movement in, a lot of folks acknowledged how taxing it is to sit for so long in the day and how they like have to move their body. For example, one person, after saying they spend some time in their longer gap walking outside or standing up, they said, quote, too much sitting down. That's one thing that I didn't think about very much entering this profession, is if you're seeing therapy clients in this sort of most traditional talk therapy format that I think most of us are utilizing as therapists, you spend a lot of time sitting. I mean, even just in my own career, if I compare the days that I'm seeing therapy clients versus the days where I'm, say, editing a video like this one, I definitely spend way more time moving my body when I'm editing a video. Even just sitting in my chair, I will move my body around a lot more editing a video. And when I'm sitting with my clients, I'm generally sitting pretty still. But wiggling my body while I'm sitting aside, it's not like I'm wiggling around everywhere while I'm editing a video. I'm just like adjusting my body much more often. I will have much larger chunks of time where I'm getting up and moving around. Like maybe I will edit a video even for 2 hours without standing up. Maybe that's not the best choice, but I will just sort of get into the flow state. I'll edit for 2 hours and then I'll go, oh, I'm getting kind of foggy. I'm going to get up, I'm going to garden, I'm going to get a snack, but then maybe it's not just a snack and sit back down. It's a snack and I'm going to fold the laundry. And then after I fold the laundry, I might go up and down the stairs a few times, taking care of a few like tidying chores. And, some of the times it might be, I'm going to go take my dog on a longer walk. I mean, obviously I have a very flexible schedule by design. Not everyone has that, even folks who aren't therapists. Like a lot of people are sitting in meetings, like how therapists are sitting in sessions. If I'm honest, I have no idea how folks in other careers spend their time as far as how much time they get to move their body versus feeling glued to their desk. But certainly it applies for therapists that we have to be pretty intentional about scheduling time in our schedule to move our bodies. Otherwise, we're just sitting. Some folks referenced going outside for a walk, and some folks said things like just kind of stretching, being mindful about like standing up, walking in loops around the office before the next session. So there's different ways that folks are making sure they move their bodies. And 14 people gave the next most common response, which was using social media or scrolling. I think it's kind of funny how many people specifically use the word scrolling versus just like going on Instagram or, checking out TikTok. To me, at least, when people use the word scrolling, it references a very specific kind of using social media that has a little bit more of that dissociative quality, or at the very least a passive quality, versus saying like, I'm going to pop onto social media because I want to see what my friend Dr. Therese is doing. I haven't checked in with her. Let me see what she's posted recently. I'm going to look her up and then like send her a cute little comment saying that she's awesome, and then closing the app. Scrolling is less intentional and more just like letting the app and the algorithm decide what you get. I think highlighting that point, somebody said in their response, quote, Instagram dissociation, LOL. And someone even referenced in their response that if they had a particularly difficult session, then that's when they would go to Instagram between sessions. I wonder what the dynamic is there for therapists who are using social media between sessions, like what kind of tool or coping skill or something that's offering. Okay, I love this next response. 7 people said that they will either lie down or sleep. In fact, more than one person just said sleeping as like their whole answer to this question. I definitely relate with that. I don't currently sleep between sessions, I think largely because I'm only seeing therapy clients 1 day a week, but I definitely used to intentionally create time to lie down when I was seeing many more clients per week, 20 plus clients per week. I would just have time in my schedule to lie down. And my mind goes to this memory of the first office that I worked in private practice. I shared it with another therapist. We each had it like a certain number of days per week. The office was a converted San Francisco townhouse. It was beautiful. Anyway, so it used to be somebody's home that was converted into offices. So our office had a closet in it. And I remember one time I opened the closet because that's where my filing cabinet was. Back in the day when we used filing cabinets. And I saw this like fold up mattress. And so I remember asking the other therapist, like, what's that fold out mattress in your closet doing there? Like, have you slept in there before? Do you have people over? And she said, oh yeah, I pull it out in the middle of the day, every client day, and I take a nap. And when she said that, I remember thinking like, that's brilliant. I relate. Like there's a point in the day where I want to do the same thing. And as I asked around, I realized there's a lot of therapists who do make time for naps. It makes sense to me that so many of us would want to lie down. First of all, we're either in our home or we likely have a couch in our office that we can lie down on. And of course, the work that we do can be quite tiring by nature, especially just depending on the type of work that you do with your clients, or even just specific sessions that were particularly heavy. And then after that, 6 people said either watching TV or YouTube. I kind of treat YouTube like TV rather than social media. 6 people said they've spent time with their pets, especially walking with their dog. And 4 people said they would check their phone, like text messages in particular. And 3 people said they would go to a store of some sort, whether it was go out to go eat or to like go shopping. And after that, there are a whole bunch of responses that either only had 1 or 2 people giving that response. The thing that really stands out to me is that only 2 people referenced spending time with others. 2 people out of 53 people. spend time with others at least sometimes between therapy sessions. And that just, that hurt. I don't know how to respond to that because something's not right. I guess that's my perception of that. And is it that, maybe some people do spend time with others, but that feels more like a default or a given? I don't think so, because people are putting eating and drinking and bathroom breaks on their responses. So that tells me that maybe people aren't spending any time with others between therapy sessions. And that's got to affect us. Now, obviously, in our little 5-minute gaps, we're probably not having a full-on hangout with someone, but I'm thinking at the very least, during your longer lunch break, hopefully you have one. You could potentially be doing it together with somebody, whether maybe it's a partner or a roommate who, you share your work from home space with, or if you work in an office like I do, maybe with some of the other people in your office, or just going and interacting with people somewhere, anywhere. But I have to give this caveat that I'm one to talk, because the way I have things currently set up, again, I'm only seeing therapy clients 1 day a week for the most part, and I very rarely interact with others between sessions on that 1 day. But back in the day when I was seeing therapy clients full-time in private practice, 4 days a week or sometimes more, I was very intentional about making sure there was some time during my work week where I was seeing people between therapy clients. It required some intentionality, putting those gaps in my schedule in order to make it happen. And some of it was just being intentional during my back-to-back sessions, leaving my door open so that if somebody else was walking by, you could just say, hey, how's it going? Nothing fancy, just a small interaction with others. And even with all that said, in my current office, I do still sometimes see others between sessions. I don't leave my door open the way that I have in other workplaces, just because the layout of this office space is a little bit less conducive to it. We have a U-shaped hallway where our doors are really, really close to each other. So if I had my door open, let's say, and if let's say somebody right facing my door was finishing up their therapy session and they open their door to let their client come out, we would have just a straight on view of each other. And that just feels like it would be a lot more respectful of that client's privacy if I just had my door closed so that, I wouldn't see them. Okay, now as promised, for the extended cut version of this episode, I'm going to read the list of all of those responses that only had 1 or 2 people saying them. One I just labeled anything not therapy related. Somebody says, quote, doing something not therapy related between clients, so I'm refreshed. Amen to that. 2 people said staring at the wall. Quote, a quick TikTok scroll or just staring at a wall for a minute, LOL. I have done that before. I won't lie. I do spend a fair amount of time just staring out the window, and I think that's the brain's version of lying down or sleeping. 2 people specifically referenced going outside. Some of this is I didn't know how to organize the responses a little bit, because a lot of the people who are walking or moving their bodies are outside while they're doing it, but 2 people just specifically said going outside. 2 people referenced house chores, the benefits of working from home. 2 people said prepping for the next session. I was actually surprised that more people didn't say this, because this is how I spend the time between my sessions as well. 2 people said reading, usually something for fun. And 2 of the responses referenced I don't have any time to do anything between sessions. Here's an example, quote, time between sessions? What is that? I'm always running late into the in-between time. That's tough. And then we talked about already, 2 people said spending time with others. 1 person referenced that they work from home, and so they spend some time with their child. And another person referenced kind of checking in with colleagues. So they must be in an in-person space kind of checking in, I assume. 2 people referenced marketing, which, if you have gaps in your schedule and you're trying to fill up, highly recommend using those gaps to market your practice if you can access it. 2 people referenced gaming, which I love that. Why not? And then the last few are just one-offs. 1 person said listening to a podcast, another person said breathing, and another person said continuing education. Woo! It's a lot of stuff. Now, I mentioned that part of the inspiration for this episode is, I've always just wondered when I've worked in different offices, what are the other therapists doing behind those closed doors when there aren't therapy clients? Is that a little... Anyway, I don't know if that's creepy, but I'm just curious. But also because I reflect quite a bit on how I spend my time between sessions. And I kind of have been on a journey throughout my career where I've allowed it to shift over time. when I first started out, I was always told to try to do my notes in between sessions, like fully, like end a session, client walks out the door, sit down, and for me, scramble to write a note. And then, hopefully you have time to pee. If you need to shove a snack in your mouth, do that. And then the next client's in on the hour and you do it all over again. And sometimes doing that like 3, 4, 5 clients back to back. And I learned that doesn't work for me. And so I was doing what I thought I was quote unquote supposed to do, but no, I do not recommend that. I know there are people who do that. And if you're doing it that way and it's working for you, more power to you. I'm just saying I was trying to make myself do this thing when it really wasn't working for me. It was not healthy, especially if you're doing that day in and day out as your job. Like sometimes, we have like one-off days. Like I'll have the occasional day. I'll like squeeze in just a little bit too many things and I have to do that. But no, that's not going to be a regular thing. So since I've come to realize that cramming notes between my back-to-back sessions is just not healthy for me, and also like I'm doing a disservice to my clients when I'm task switching so much, and I'm kind of a little bit more frazzled, kind of have a little bit more of that anxious energy with me when I'm stepping into the start of my next session. And I find it much more helpful to check in on my session prep. Like I'll have all my sessions prepped in the morning before I even see my first client of the day. I have them all kind of visited all their notes and took down little mini notes to remind me of what we're working on next in our session. And so then between sessions, I just review those little mini notes that I jotted down in the morning to say, oh, right, yeah, last time I did this with that client. Today we're working on that, unless, they want to pivot. So I'll review that for a minute or two. And otherwise between sessions, I'll just check real quick if I have any emails or missed calls from my clients of that day, because it's not unusual for somebody to message saying I'm running a little late, or, I'm so sorry I got sick. Can I cancel? That sort of thing. So I want to catch those in between sessions. And then I usually check my text messages from my loved ones. And if there's any important text message, usually from my partner, usually about something related to childcare or something like that, then I will follow up with that. And then I will also check my girls' childcare apps to see if there's anything noteworthy that is more urgent. That's always something I wonder about. Like in a lot of childcare settings, they'll say like, you need to come immediately if, let's say, your child has a fever. And it's like, on the one hand, 100%. Yes, I should come immediately and pick up my child if they have a fever. However, I have a job that ties me up for 50 minutes at a time. So if I have a 1 o'clock client and the school calls at 1:01 to tell me that my child has a fever, come pick her up, like by the time I've gotten out of session at 1:50, they will already have contacted all of our emergency contacts. So then I'll get like calls frantically from like my brother in LA being like, hey, is everything okay? Like, do you need me to come pick up my niece because her school's calling? It's like, no, I just was like seeing a client and everything's on do not disturb. So it's not like that happens every day, but it definitely happens like a fair amount. And I always wonder how other therapists navigate stuff like that. And during my longer gaps, I've embraced doing things to take care of myself. The way I have my schedule set up right now, on my 1 day a week that I see therapy clients, is I see 2 clients and then I have an hour gap, 2 clients and an hour gap, and then 2 clients. Sometimes I will shuffle it around. Like if my third client of the day wants to bump an hour earlier, then I might see 3 in a row, but then I'll still try to keep those 2 1-hour gaps as much as possible to not compromise on them. One of them, I will eat a larger meal, and that usually takes me about 30 minutes of the gap. And then otherwise, the remaining hour and 45 minutes in my gaps, I will usually do something that's really peaceful. So I might be working on a knitting project. I might like play some really relaxing music. I might stare out the window. I will try at some point to get outside so at some point during the hour and a half that's there. Again, if I had client days every day or even like 3 days a week, I would make sure that I was getting out. But because I only do it one day a week, sometimes there's some days where I only go out to like check the mail and then come back. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, the temperature outside is different than I thought. Like when I have those moments, then it's a little dystopian. Like I didn't even know what the temperature outside was. Does that happen to you all? I live in San Diego where being outside is like part of my life, a very important part of my life. And those client days, I really noticed that I'm inside a lot. And then I save notes and admin stuff for like outside of that time between therapy clients. I've just found that much more helpful. That's something I've only started doing in the last like few years, really since having kids. That task switching, it's like my brain is fatigued from task switching with my kids so much, I think, or I'm just getting older. I don't know. Task switching feels harder than it used to. And so like jumping into like writing a note and doing an admin task feels like it takes a lot of effort. And so I'd rather just save all of them now and do them all at once. It feels like less work to me. It's taken me a really long time in my career. I feel too long, many, many years before I fully embraced that I needed that time between sessions for me and like to schedule longer gaps between sessions and not just do back to back to back all day. I felt like even when I had a gap in my schedule, I was supposed to be doing something work related. I would need to be doing continuing education or marketing my practice or something like that. And I'm realizing that actually over and over again, I'd have on my agenda for that day to, during my gap, do something kind of work related, like continuing education. And then I'd get to that time in my schedule and then I'd feel like I just don't even want to do this. I just want to go outside and walk around or just maybe even spend some time zoning out on YouTube or something like that. And I would continuously like have this work kind of thing scheduled for my gaps and then just not do it and then be really hard on myself for not following through on the thing that I scheduled. And so it took me years to finally embrace this and stop fighting it. And just for myself, at least know that I need some bigger gaps in my schedule when I see therapy clients. And it does not serve me to try to do more work things aside from like catch up on the occasional email or things like that. During those gaps, I need to do something that's absolutely unrelated to therapy. So yeah, knitting is a common one or like some sort of crafty thing. It could be like if I have a therapy type reading that I'm interested in, I might do that. Honestly, that's not typical. Usually I'm going outside. If I have a client cancel, the way I have my schedule set up, that automatically gives me a 2-hour gap in my schedule. And so if I do have a client cancel, which happens about once every other week on shorter notice, that opening stays open, then I will try to go somewhere. Like I will get in my car and I will go somewhere lovely, like the beach, or maybe run an errand that I'd been putting off, or maybe just go to a store and walk around and buy nothing, or sometimes buy something, okay? And then when I come back for the rest of my sessions, I feel like I push the reboot button on my system and I'm way less tired at the end of the day than if I had been inside working all day. That is a gross feeling. If I'm inside all day, only seeing therapy clients or only doing like worky tasks like notes, admin, continuing ed, working on my marketing, that sort of thing, I don't feel good at the end of the day, even if just doing it one day. So that's just knowing myself. I'm not saying that prescriptively, but that's what sparked my curiosity and your responses. And as part of my embracing of this, I actually have like a bag that I bring to work that is my fun activities for the day and my lunch. So there's like my work bag that has all my work stuff and a backpack. And then I'll always have a separate tote bag of like my fun activities. And that's also like part of the fun of it. It was like deciding which fun activities are going in the bag. Maybe there's like a, food or decorating related magazine that I picked up, or maybe I have a book from the library about gardening, or maybe I've got some knitting in there, and I'll like hit that point in my day where I go like, I need some self-care during my gap, and I'll just pull out the bag and it kind of feels like there's like a little delight of like, oh, I get to do this right now, because otherwise I might not be doing some of those things. So I save my like kind of treat, just like super free time items for that moment. It makes the days that I see therapy clients feel just all around, just like very well-rounded, because I do genuinely enjoy seeing my therapy clients. And I think some of the snags that I tend to hit personally on those days is like, I didn't go outside. I didn't spend any time doing something that I enjoy that's just for me to kind of like regroup, push the reboot button, start over for, my next sessions. All right, well, I didn't script this video, so I'm sure it was all over the place as always, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone who responded. I appreciated that you gave the real answers and not the like answers that whatever someone told us in graduate school or something that we're supposed to do. And I hope you all feel validated in however you spend your time between sessions, or if you'd be helped by slowing down or, scheduling an extra gap somewhere in your schedule so that you can grab a coffee with a friend or like get to know your office neighbor or something else. By all means, go for the gold. I support you. Well, I'm curious, as you're watching this, how do you spend your time between sessions? I'd love to hear from you if you're willing to share in the comments. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.